Hello, welcome back to a Clubcast blog podcast kind of article we're going to do here. I was talking to a club yesterday and they asked me about intros, just kind of focusing on intros. So conversation started because I was talking about how I think about and divide podcasts up into 3 sections. We have our intros, we have the meat of the podcast, everything that happens as you're recording the podcast, the kind of middle part of the podcast, and then you have closing. And so if you approach and think about each of those sections in a slightly different variation, you get your whole podcast. So I kind of think of it like a chess game. Anyone who plays chess, I divide chess up into 3 sections as well. So you can study intros to chess. Then there's the game, how the game plays. And then there's the closing game of chess. How do you close out a game? Same with a podcast. There's the intro, the middle section of the podcast, and then the closing of the podcast. And each one of those, you enter into a different stage, a different way of thinking about it. And so there's multiple ways to do podcast intros. And we'll take a look at a couple podcast intros today. And I thought, what no better way to start out than let's look at the Boys and Girls Club in Santa Fe, the Teen Center, how they did their Healthy Habits podcast. Now, the reason why I wanted to start with this, because I thought it was helpful to think about podcasting as a group. Now, most podcasts aren't recorded as a group with lots of different hosts that are all sharing a podcast together, a season, or working collaboratively on a podcast. So here, what we had is a group of kids. I think there was like about 10 kids all collaborating on healthy habits together. Now they could pair up and work on a individual episode in pairs of 2, but a lot of kids also decided to take their own episode. So you have individual episodes, but all working together to create a full show, season 1 of Healthy Habits. And what they decided to do, which was really cool, was they created an intro together. So all the hosts, you'd hear their voices at different times in the intro. And then they would introduce themselves, and then they would say, my name is so-and-so, and I'm going to be on this episode. You'll hear, this will be my episode. And then another host at another will introduce themselves to intro that episode. So we'll take a listen to that just so you can hear how that plays out and what it sounds like. And then we'll hear how each one of these comes together to make the entire show.
The Boys and Girls Clubs implemented healthy habits pre-COVID.
But it is important that we continue to encourage healthy habits throughout this pandemic.
Healthy Habits encourages healthy living.
In this podcast, we will be discussing healthy habits related to nutrition, mental health, exercise, and communication.
And we are your hosts. Hi, my name is Angel Martinez.
Hi, I'm Ella Gettler.
Hi, my name is Colin Danielle.
I'm Elvistos.
Hi, I am Alicia Gettler.
Hi, my name is Danielle.
Welcome to the Healthy Habits Podcast.
Hello, welcome to another episode of the Healthy Habits Podcast. My name is Danielle, and I will be leading today's episode. Today, we will be talking about the pandemic, vaccines, and our experiences with them. I'm here with our group of teens. This will be a group discussion, so I'll let them introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Ella Gettler.
Hi, I'm Elvistos.
Hello, I'm Colin Danielle.
Hello, I'm Angel Martinez.
Hi, I'm Alicia Gettler.
Okay, so let's get into it. So first, the pandemic. The first question I want to...
And just like that, the intro is done. So we are at, it looks like 1 minute in on a 25-minute podcast. So that's pretty quick. That's very good. I think something to keep in mind is keeping your intros short enough, especially because you'll have repeat listeners. And if you have long intros that are all repetitive and exactly the same, that take up 3-4 minutes of time, you can really bore those listeners. So they did a great job. You'll notice the sound they used. They had some really nice background sound playing.
Implemented healthy habits pre-COVID.
It's not overpowering, so the sound.
Healthy habits
Let me-
throughout this pandemic.
Healthy Habits encourages
Let me
healthy
turn it
living.
down a
In
little.
this podcast, we will be discussing healthy habits related.
So they were very mindful of the audio level, the music they were playing to their voices, and the background sound doesn't overpower the host's voice. I thought it was great how they introduce themselves and talk about healthy habits and what it does. And then this is Danielle's episode, and she got right into it and said, there's going to be multiple of us having a roundtable discussion on this, and I'll let them introduce themselves, and then boom, we're into the podcast. So just like that, this podcast got started. Now let's listen to, I guess that was episode 8. I started there. We'll click here and get episode 1.
The Boys and Girls Clubs implemented healthy habits pre-COVID.
But it is important that we continue to encourage healthy habits throughout this pandemic.
Healthy Habits encourages healthy living.
In this podcast, we will be discussing healthy habits related to nutrition, mental health, exercise, and communication.
And we are your hosts.
So right there, they said in this podcast, we're going to be discussing nutrition, mental health, right? So they're telling you what this whole podcast, Healthy Habits, is about in just a couple, they in one line, they boiled this essence of what this podcast is down. That's perfect.
Hi, I'm Ella Gettler.
Hi, my name is Callan Danielle.
I'm Elvis.
Hi, I am Alicia Gettler.
Hi, my name's Danielle.
Welcome to the Healthy Habits Podcast.
Welcome to
Very clever how they did that. So welcome to the health. So individually they introduce themselves, and then a collective, everybody together. You hear their voices in unison coming together to make up this podcast that we're going to listen to.
Hi, my name is Callan Danielle.
I'm Elvis.
Hi, I am Alicia Gettler.
Hi, my name's Danielle.
Welcome to the Healthy Habits Podcast.
Welcome to our first episode of Healthy Habits. The purpose of this podcast is simply to be a resource to you, our listeners, related to all things healthy. Today we'll be introducing ourselves and what topics we'll be discussing throughout this podcast. Hello, my name is Angel Martinez, and my topic will be health exercise for teenagers. I will be discussing what type of exercises, what type of foods and proteins, and how regular should teenagers be exercising. We will be speaking to someone from Planet Fitness about their free high school summer pass membership.
So, Angel, why did you choose this topic?
The reason that I chose this topic was because throughout COVID, I'm pretty sure I thought that there was a lot of teenagers that didn't get exercise or just stay home and sleep in. That's what I did. And as well, it made me realize how unhealthy teenagers throughout the whole world became so unhealthy because of eating junk food and just sitting there on the computers throughout school, not going out or doing anything. So I think this is an important thing to make all teenagers realize that there's somewhere they should go and do exercise to not damage their health.
Hi, I am Alicia Gettler. My episode is going to be about communication, where I'm going to discuss healthy communication methods and how the pandemic has affected our communication with DJ Lopez.
Alicia, why do you think that this topic is important for our listeners to hear about?
So, a lot of our listeners have spent the last few years mostly being at home.
So I'm going to pause it right there. I just let that play a little longer so we could hear how they use. So this is the very first intro episode where each host will introduce themselves, talk about what their episode is going to be about, and then I thought that was brilliant how they asked a question. Why is your episode important? What are listeners going to get from it? Why do you think it's important? And boom, we're going to get a little taste of what this whole show is going to be about, and what each episode, who's going to be the host of which episode, and what their topic is. So just like that, we got a little listen on how they conducted a group exercise podcast. Lots of people collaborating together to make up individual shows all around a shared topic. So that was Healthy Habits, coming to you from the Boys and Girls Club in Santa Fe. Great job. I thought that was great. So I'm going to click on another one. Now we'll listen to a professional one. So here's an old podcast, many seasons, How I Built This with Guy Raz. Now, a lot of these, I think we'll hear if I hit play from the beginning.
Wondery Plus subscribers can listen to How I Built This early and ad-free right now. Join Wondery Plus in the Wondery app or on Apple Podcasts.
Little ad.
There's a lot of talk about AI's effectiveness and how easy it is to implement, but Did you know that Grammarly is a
So
trust
Grammarly
ad?
ad.
Just a couple weeks ago, it was absolutely beautiful.
Most people
and
don't have
the
to worry about
perfect base
Grammarly
for
ads
exploring the city. Maybe you're planning
or
a
any
trip
ads.
for a long
Later, we
holiday
can do a
weekend, and while
breakdown
you're away, you could
on
Airbnb
creating
your home
ads
and
for
make some
podcasts.
extra income toward the trip. Credit card, savings account next week, and I'll be joined by some pretty incredible guests like Joe Gebbia, co-founder of Airbnb. And
Okay.
so this week we've got a great best of awards today at nerdwallet.com/awards.
Okay. So let me pause it right there because I think we're about to get into their intro, which I think might have multiple layers to it. So let's hear this intro. So a little sound tag that lasted 1 second.
Hey everyone, it's Guy here. So our team is just getting back from our holiday break. So this week we've got a great episode from the archives. Our Advice Line conversation with Lara American of Larabar. We'll be back with fresh Advice Line episodes starting next week, and I'll be joined by some pretty incredible guests like Joe Gebbia, co-founder of Airbnb, and Jack Conte, who co-founded Patreon. So stay tuned. And thank you to all of you who called in so far. I cannot wait to talk through more of your business challenges in the new year, and I'm looking forward to hearing your ideas. So enjoy the show.
Okay, so that was interesting because this is a pre-recorded little bit, which was basically like a news announcement or a little announcement that, you know, this is a rerun or whatever, and then also we'll be back. We're going to have new shows with new people, announcements of who those people are. So a little kind of housekeeping announcement to keep the listeners informed. So if you're thinking about, sometimes there might be things happening at the club that maybe you want to add a little special announcement of things that might be coming, you can always use that intro to say, hey, we got some upcoming events before this podcast. Just want to let you know we have a gala coming up, or we're going to do a special trip or special things happening, or source it for ideas or whatever. So you can use a small, short little segment there for announcements. So
hello and welcome to the Advice Line on How I Built This Lab. I'm Guy Raz. This is the place where we help try to solve your business challenges. Each week, I'm joined by a legendary founder, a former guest on the show who will help me try to help you. And if you're building something and you need advice, give us a call and you just might be the next guest on the show. Our number is 1-800-433-1298. Send us a 1-minute message that tells us about your business and the issues or questions that you'd like help with. You can also send us a voice memo at hibt@id.wondery.com. And make sure to tell us how to reach you. And also, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. It's full of insights and ideas from the world's greatest entrepreneurs. You can sign up for free at guyraz.com. And we'll put all this info in the podcast description. All right, let's get to it. Joining me this week is Lara.
So just like that, that was probably the, all that is pre-recorded and used over and over again. Then they have the sound file that runs longer, and then he can come in and add the intro to who the guest is about to be. So he's about to introduce the guest, and then we'll roll right into the conversation. But again, that was some stock intro where he also gave some information, and he talked about this section here where he's going to add some links. So if we click more, here are the links to how to send in your own voice recordings to them about, you know, do you want to be on the show? Because basically they invite entrepreneurs onto the show to present a problem. And then him and a former guest who has already had breakout success try to solve that problem or offer solutions, help, and tips. Very cool. So this show, I mean, we got some really nice background music there that, again, wasn't overpowering. Also, there are no lyrics in the music that these people are choosing for their background sounds. They are all kind of instrumental or sound effects. So that was very neat as well. Let's take it back.
guest on the show who will help me try to help
So he's
you.
explaining
And
the
if you're
concept of
building
the show,
something and you need advice, give us a call, and you just might be the next guest
encourages
on the show.
more
Our
participation
number
right
is
at the beginning.
1-800-433-1298.
There's the number to call.
Send us a 1-minute message that tells us about your business and the issues or questions that you'd like help with. You can also send us a voice memo at hibt.
Just a nice little bass line, some plucking of notes, keeps the background music
And
simple.
also, don't forget to sign up for my newsletter. It's full of insights and ideas from the world's
Encourages
greatest
sign-ups for his
entrepreneurs.
newsletter.
You can sign up for free at GuyRaz.com. And we'll put all this info in the podcast description. All right, let's get to it. Joining me this week is Lara American, the founder of Larabar. Lara, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Guy. It's wonderful to be back.
So great hanging out. I don't think I've seen you since we took a run in.
Curious to
in
see when this
Denver a
music's
couple
gonna
years ago
fade out.
before the pandemic.
That's hard to believe that it's been that long.
No,
4
it's
years.
been a long time. There's a period where I was seeing you all the time. You were coming to our summits and
Music's
stuff. Anyway,
fading,
it's great to have you back on the show.
and the music's faded
you were
out,
first on the show way back in
and the
2018.
podcast now.
And
has
back
started.
then you, of course, told the story.
So
of how
boom,
you
we are
created this
into him
incredible
now,
brand.
starting his podcast interview, talking with his guest. And just like that, he's about to go into that first stage of, so it's like intro and then kind of warming up the guest and getting that conversation started. So he'll start talking with the guest and before you know it, the podcast is off and running. So he's just kind of welcoming the guest and in this case, making her feel comfortable and getting the podcast started. So the intro sound music clip that they created for the stock intro. So the pre-recorded, so in post-production, in the editing, they have that stock intro where it's already recorded with the background music, but then they let the music run much longer and then they fade the music down. So that way, when he then records his podcast with his guests, he can then layer on the recording and it still has some of that music going, and then the music will start to fade out as they get into that conversation. It looked like, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds.
Larabar. Lara, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Guy. It's wonderful to be back.
So great hanging out. I don't think I've seen you since we took a run in Denver like a couple years ago before the pandemic.
Music is
That's
fading.
hard to believe that it's been that long.
I know,
4
it's been
years.
a long time. There's a
Fading.
period where I was seeing you all the time. You were coming to our summits and stuff.
Just a very gentle fade. It ran longer than I expected, but still, it didn't intrude on the conversation. So that there is the how I built this. We could take a look at another one. So this is Smartless. I looked for some podcasts that ended 2024 at the top of Apple Podcast charts. And this was one of them. And the reason why I took note of this one as well is because it didn't sound like they do anything too fancy, and they just get in and start talking pretty quickly. Let's see here. I actually haven't listened to any of these really yet, but
sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on
So
hold for an appointment.
they're starting
sitting
with an
in
ad
crowded-
because they're
Sonic
able to
Smasher
run
lineup. Take the
ads.
Sonic Smasher you know and love with
Because
hand
they have
smash
enough listener to
patties
run
made
ads.
order, get a double.
which
So-
offers
so these
insanely
bigger
cool
podcasts
Airstreams
have
and iconic
ads.
outdoor destinations. Hilton also has
So there's the little
Hi,
music
guys.
tag.
Good morning. Welcome to another podcast.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, Will.
And it's me. I'm here too. Hi, it's Jason. Hi.
Oh, there he is, Sean. What's up, Sean?
Yeah, Will.
There he is, my guy Sean,
Will, what?
me and Sean on the old Smartless. Welcome to Smartless with Will and Sean.
So that was already part of the real podcast, but then they splice it and they drop that little sound in there with like Smartless, like this digital thing. So this little music piece is the pre-recorded part, but them introducing themselves was part of the live
Hey,
podcast.
JB, speaking of
And then they just
the
played it.
sidelines at the game last night, I got a
So what they had is they just hit record and started recording and introduced themselves. Hey, it's me, Jason Bateman. Blah, blah, blah. Hey, it's me. And they each say, hey, and then they cut the audio in post-production when they're editing it. They open it up from where they cut it and they were introducing themselves. They put that little sound bite of Smartless electronic music, which lasted, I think, less than a minute again. And then that fades out. And then boom, they're off and talking.
text exchange with our buddy Hall of Fame former quarterback.
And the podcast just goes from here where it sounds like three guys just on a microphone talking, rambling away, having fun. And yet this podcast is top of the podcast charts. Nothing fancy. They came up with a little sound clip that says Smartless over and over again in a digital kind of style. Let's see if we can find it.
Will and Sean.
So right here, it's pre-recorded. So they started recording, they stopped, they play this clip, and then they keep the recording going. This clip is inserted after the whole podcast has been recorded in post-production. Super simple.
Hey, JB, speaking.
And off it goes. So unlike the other one we listened to where the music runs under their voices and keeps going, this one is a simple splice in post-production. So after the entire podcast has been done, it's spliced, they drop in the stock music that they've created, and then boom, they keep going. Now, there's a lot of talented musician kids at the Boys and Girls Club you have a lot of clubs have music rooms. There's a lot of kids who like to make music. There's no reason why you couldn't ask around the club and say, hey, does anyone want to make the music sound effects for our podcast? And look at some examples or whatever and see the creativeness that these kids can come up with, because that's a huge opportunity. They can create the sound effects for your podcasts. So let's check out another one. All right, so let's see what happened.
Curious are the ones that you've never heard of before. I'm Ashley Flowers, and every Wednesday on my show,
Let's rewind this.
There are some cases so infamous that we have all heard about them. But some of the coldest cases, the most mysterious, are the ones
So this
that
is
you've
all
never heard of
pre-recorded.
before. I'm Ashley Flowers, and every Wednesday on my show, The Deck, I dive into the coldest of cold cases. Many of these victims didn't get the press coverage they deserved during the initial investigations, but I'm sharing what our reporting team has found on these stories in hopes that someone listening may have the information needed to bring answers to light. And that listener could be you. Listen to The Deck now, wherever you get your podcasts. Why choose a Sleep Number smart bed?
Okay, so that she did her intro to her podcast, and now we're about to get some ads. She also mentioned every Wednesday. So they have, for this Crime Junkie podcast, they have a set scheduled date where every Wednesday they're dropping a new podcast. So they're letting the audience know. We got a little.
May have the information needed to bring
The
answers
sound
to
music
light.
ran a little and then
listener
faded
could
out.
be you.
And then we're about to
Listen
splice
The
into
Deck
an ad.
now, wherever you get your podcasts.
So there's the music running longer, fades out.
Why choose a Sleep
Here's an
Number
ad.
smart bed?
We'll
See
fast
store
forward.
or sleepnumber.com.
Well, it's officially too cold to do anything. The upside, you can cocoon yourself in soft and cozy
More
bottom
ads?
socks, slippers, and under 25. The perfect time, Las Vegas. And for the special occasion, we're unlocking an episode from the Crime Junkie fan.
So here's an
club.
announcement.
We hope you guys have enjoyed these re-releases as much
So
as
they
we have.
used a
We
little
loved being
intro
in your ears
announcement
each
as well.
Thursday, re-highlighting cases from
We heard
all
another
around the
podcast do an
country. And we
announcement.
can't wait to see you all in person so soon.
That's also cool. Podcasts have gone real in-person performances now. So if you start a podcast and it gets really popular and big, you can always do a in-person event. So imagine doing a special thing at your club where you've been working on podcasts and maybe at the end of the year, you've done podcasts throughout the entire year. Now at the very end of the year, you could do a live podcast taping. Maybe we set up a big table and have the podcasting stuff, and different kids can come up and interview different people from the audience. Make it audience participation podcast, and you could make a huge announcement to the community and kind of host it like an event where you're bringing people into your club, bringing the community together to learn about your club, but also to participate in a podcast run by kids where they'll just kind of live recording, interviewing audience members about, who knows what. You could do a comedy podcast where the kids are telling jokes and having fun. You could do, who knows what. I'm sure we could brainstorm and come up with some great ideas to do a live podcast event held in your club.
Hi, Crime Junkies. I'm your host, Ashley Flowers.
And I'm Britt.
And the story I have for you today is about how a young woman's night out with a trusted family friend turned into a nightmare.
So, boom, just like that now, they're doing the live intro where they had their stock intro that we heard at the very beginning that they play every episode. Then they had ad, and then they had a little announcement. And then, boom, here's the recording for this episode where the hosts start out and just say, hi, I'm Abby. You know, she introduced herself again and then kind of cues you up into, we got a really, crazy night and they're going to unfold the story of this unsolved crime, right? And bring the listener in and get them hooked. So that's how they do it. I didn't even hear any background music under their voices.
So soon. Hi, Crime Junkies. I'm your host, Ashley Flowers.
And I'm Brett.
And the story I have for you today.
And the story I have for you today, it's like story time. It's pretty crazy. They don't have any background music at all. They just get right into the podcast. So they're able to sit down at their recording, equipment and just hit record and have the conversation. This is probably a thoroughly researched podcast. So they've done a lot of research. They set up kind of like the order of events that they're going to take you through and unfold this story. And then they're going to talk about it and all the facts that go along with it. But the beginning is where they have pre-recorded their stock intro. So
there are
here's
some
that music.
cases so infamous that we have all heard about them.
And that's the cook. There are some cases so infamous we have all heard about them with this kind of violin-y kind of string,
but some of
suspense
the
music
cases
in the back. So music should fit the feeling of your podcast. Like this high suspense sound from Crime Junkies makes sense. It's suspenseful. They want to pull you in. But then later when they're kicking off the podcast, there's no music. They just get right into it because they know that the content they're creating will hold your interest and you're ready to go. So that's this one. All right, next up, we have another one. So Smartless was top of Apple charts. Crime Junkies was top of Apple charts. And The Daily here was another one that was top of Apple charts.
As flames surround the city.
Let's get this rewound to the very beginning. I'm going to hit play.
This podcast is supported by BetterHelp. Every January brings you 365 blank pages
out about the fire.
.com/The Daily today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp.
Little ad at the beginning.
/The Daily.
My name is Orly Israel. I live with my family in the Pacific Palisades. I found out about the fire must have been like 10 a.m. when someone texted me, "Is everything okay?"
So this is starting out with a clip, an audio clip, kind of like a call-in where this person has just found out about the fires that are devastating Los Angeles right now. This podcast was released 16 hours ago. This is quite a long clip, so I'll play it, a little bit of it, another few seconds, and we'll hear they're starting it out because this is a news-based podcast. So put yourself in the news mindset. They're unfolding through this audio message of somebody finding out the devastating news of the fire.
I said the fire, and I looked out the window, and there's this huge plume of smoke just coming over the mountains.
They also added a little to the call, so they've got a call recording. Somebody, they got somebody on a phone line. You can definitely hear it's a phone line recording. And then they're adding also a little bit of suspense in the background with the music.
Living in Los
It's like a
Angeles,
tone.
there are fires around fairly often. And, seeing smoke is not an unusual thing. And the sound, it was just too hot and too many.
They're holding that tone, just like single soft tones behind the whole message.
Really gone, and then wait until they let us come pick through.
Structures have burned to the ground.
Okay.
In the last 48 hours.
So there it is. He just finished talking.
From the New York Times, I'm Natalie Kitroeff, and this is The Daily.
There's the intro. So this was an interesting intro because they used the actual first-person account experiencing the event of the day, a very long 3-minute unfolding, first person telling of their experience. And now the New York Times daily podcast person gives you the intro. And we'll start with
In the last 48 hours,
story.
devastating wildfires have consumed more than 25,000 acres in Los Angeles, with more than 100,000 households being told to evacuate. As flames surround the city, thousands of structures have burned to the ground, and at least 5 people have died.
So they get right into the reporting from there. So they bring you into the story from a first person's account. They play a bit of the sound and the music. The person kind of unfolds the event that we're about to learn about.
From the New York Times, I'm Natalie Kitroeff, and this is The Daily.
So the name of the show, and then
In the last 48 hours, devastating wildfires have consumed
sets the stage in a very news-like manner of kind of filling us in. So that's how The Daily and a news-based show runs their intro, which was a kind of different take and pretty cool. And then last up, if you've made it this far, we can check out
respond
Hidden Brain. So let's see what Hidden Brain does. And this is a very well polished professional sound to
This
this
is
podcast.
Hidden Brain. I'm Shankar Vedanta.
So no music behind it. Right away, this is Hidden Brain. I'm Shankar, and he introduces himself. And then now we're about to get a little music, it sounds like.
There's an old saying attributed to Benjamin Franklin. Nothing is certain in life except for death and taxes. But death and taxes are not the only guarantees.
So what's interesting is probably the only stock is this. Ready?
This is Hidden Brain. I'm Shankar Vedanta.
That might be a clip they put in so it sounds exactly the same. I'd have to listen to some other ones. But there's nothing fancy about introducing the show and himself. Right away, it's just my name, or the name of the show, and my name as the host. Boom.
This is Hidden Brain. I'm Shankar Vedanta.
Now we're about to get right into the
attributed
episode.
To Benjamin Franklin. Nothing is certain in life except for death and taxes. But death and taxes are not the only guarantees. If we live long enough, all of us will experience great setbacks, crises that seem insurmountable, challenges that seem far bigger than we are. When we see others go through natural disasters or terrible illnesses, or the emotional upheavals that come from child custody.
So what's interesting is I think we're going to get so this is him recording a special intro for this podcast, and then we'll have a guest. But he's recorded a conversation. I imagine he knew what he wanted to record about in terms of the topic. And, so here we have the written description of what we're gonna hear about and who he's going to record with. Today on the show, we examine psychology of pushing through a crisis. So that's the main meat of the show, pushing through a crisis. And he talks to this psychologist, Adam Galansky, about great leaders and what they can teach us about being steadfast in the face of challenges. So he probably had this podcast and then recorded this podcast. And then after the podcast was done, went back to his studio and recorded the intro that we're listening to right now, this kind of well-written script, but this intro is custom tailored to this individual episode that we're about to listen to.
Battles or losing a livelihood, we think, how terrible for them. I'm so glad this didn't happen to me. But what we fail to see in these moments is that all of us are going to experience our own versions of these emergencies and tragedies. Having to deal with crises is an occupational hazard of being alive. What do we do in such moments? How do our minds respond when faced with catastrophe? And can we better prepare ourselves for their inevitable arrival? Today on the show, and in a companion piece on Hidden Brain Plus, we examine the psychology of battling a crisis. It's part of our series, Wellness 2.0. What happens in our minds when we face danger, and what we can learn from those who prove steadfast in such moments. Techniques and strategies for responding better when life throws us crises, curveballs, and catastrophes. this week on Hidden Brain.
So that was an intro, beautifully done, well thought out. He put a lot of time and thinking into writing a custom intro designed specifically for this episode. So for every episode, it will get its special thought-provoking intro. And now he'll introduce the guest.
We are all called upon from time to time to do hard and sometimes seemingly impossible things. Do we rise to the occasion, or do we fall short? At Columbia University, psychologist Adam Galinsky has studied the science of decision-making and leadership, what it takes to rise to the occasion, and what happens in our minds when we don't. Adam Galinsky, welcome to Hidden Brain.
Thank you so much.
Adam, in January 2012...
So just like that, now the podcast will unfold and the conversation will get rolling. But what a wonderful little intro, and what a wonderful way to start the conversation and bring the guest in, and boom, they're going. So we just looked at a bunch of different podcast intros, and I think we also saw not all of them need to be as highly polished as this Hidden Brain one that we listened to just now. That takes a lot of work, and these people are professional podcasters. We also listened to kind of ones with quick little intros, especially if you remember the one from SmartLess. That was probably the simplest one, where they sat down, they recorded their podcast, they introduced their names, and then they just had a little jingle that they splice and play in the middle. That's probably like a 5-second, 10-second jingle. And then boom, on with the conversation. So not all podcasts need to be highly overproduced, right? So the Healthy Habits one, they did they are doing more highly produced, thought out intros, because they're really working with the kids and teaching them how to do an intro like this. But not keep in mind, not all of them have to be over architected, overdone, or over thought out. Sometimes if you want to have some podcasts where the kids are just having fun and they can introduce themselves, maybe it's fun to give a shout out to the Boys and Girls Club where they're recording. Hey, we're recording live, or we're recording here from the Boys and Girls Club in Santa Fe, in the mall, and sometimes also in an intro you can set the stage as well. So maybe the club is noisy and a lot of things are going on. You can let the audience know, like, hey, you might hear some pool table. Kids are having fun on the pool table, and there's some video games being played over in the next room, and the kids are having fun. This is an active place. But, we're here to talk to you about, the music we're listening to, whatever, right? And boom, off they go. Not everything needs to be highly produced. So let them have fun. Reach out anytime. You can always schedule calls with us. Support. Click on support. Workshop support right here. Just click on that. It'll open up a calendar. You can pick whatever time works best for you. So we look forward to listening to your podcast. As you get podcasts recorded and uploaded, send them to us. We'd love to feature them. We'd love to look at what you're doing. And then if you need support, let's get on calls together and go over more ideas. There's so much to learn. There's no one right way to do this. It's more about having fun and developing over time. So, that's it for now. That'll be intros. We can talk about closing. We'll do another follow-up on closing podcasts. And have fun with it. Hope everyone is podcasting or will be podcasting soon. Talk more later.